This is Civic Center Plaza. And I guess the best way to start this thing off, this all kind of got formed in the 1960s. If you go back to way back to 1924, you got all the growth in the early part of the 20th century, the big building boom in downtown Memphis. You look at all these big old tall buildings like Klarich House 1924 and Lincoln American Tower 1924 and D.T. Porter like in the 1890s, but Steric Building 1930, Exchange Building. A lot of building occurred between 1910, let's say, and 1930. The Steric Building, when we get around to it, was the last tall building. It was the tallest building in the entire South at the time when it was built in 1930. The last skyscraper built in Memphis, but I say skyscraper, I say 20 stories or more at the time, okay? Because those two buildings over there on Jefferson between 2nd and 3rd, Jefferson Plaza is one of them, I think, where I got my draft card. Did you get your draft card there? Okay. Did y'all have to get draft cards? Where'd you get your draft card? You were too old to be in the draft, weren't you? But those were built in like 1958. So the tallest building built in Memphis and the entire South in 1930, and not another tall building built for 34 years until the First Tennessee Bank building. This was built in 1965. So there's a big gap because of the Depression, because of World War II. Now in 1924, Harlan Bartholomew and Associates had a plan for the city of Memphis. I got a hardbound book I haven't relinquished yet. And the plan basically included the area inside the parkways, really, because there wasn't much Memphis outside the parkways. I mean, there's little suburbs and stuff, but in the 20s and 30s. They're always being annexed in every 10 years. But a street plan, a coordinated street plan, again, to sync up the streets, like 3rd Street would come down to about Union, then you'd have Rayburn and Hernando, and it'd be kind of janky. See how 3rd Street kind of goes like this before it gets to Crump? You know, they had to start syncing some streets up. Lauderdale and Wellington became Danny Thomas later on in the 1960s, where Lauderdale is from Wendy's to St. Jude was an open ditch. It became a Lauderdale Street. So they had, and going out to the medical center, they had all the new street plans and showed the streetscapes at the time. It's a fascinating book. And part of that was to build a Civic Center Plaza. Part of that was to put an airport on Mud Island. Because again, in 1927, that's when Lindbergh flew across the ocean. How did he get back to America? Aboard a boat named the USS Memphis, of course. Yeah, and then he went on a around the nation tour promoting aviation as a way of future travel, October 3rd, 1927. He came into Memphis. He buzzed the Lincoln American Tower. It was the tallest building in Memphis at the time. You know when we have those air shows like at Memphis in May on the Friday before, they're out there right at rush hour in the afternoon buzzing back and forth, getting everybody's attention. So he landed out at the airport. Strip was out at Millington, Armstrong Field in 1927. And came and had a dinner at the Peabody. We got the menu and the program from that dinner in the memorabilia room, the Peabody frame for the Lindbergh dinner. But he kind of shamed all the cities about aviation in the way of the future. So we formed our airport commission, started buying the land in Whitehaven where our future airport became. And so that's kind of where we were in the 1920s. Of course, the Depression hits, everything falls to a standstill, World War II. Post-World War II, now you start seeing shopping centers, like Poplar Plaza in 1949, schools going out, annexation, expressways coming in, 2-car families, shopping malls. 68 was Whitehaven Mall, 71 Raleigh Mall, you see. So City Hall, so they formed a plan for the civic buildings to get together. City, federal, state, county are all right here. And basically before that time, the federal office was over where the law school is now, the U.S. Customs House, Courthouse, and Post Office. City Hall at the time was over where the courthouse is over here. And so was county buildings. In 1910, when that building opened, every branch of city and county government were in that one building, and the courts. And we've grown government since then, haven't we? But we've grown the city as well. I don't remember where the state building was, and I don't remember where the county building was, but they had to have bigger buildings. So 63 is what I say for the opening of this. No, 63 for the federal building, 65 or 66 for City Hall, 67 for the state building, 69 for the administrative building. That's now the Vasco A. Smith administrative building. Vasco Smith being a doctor, a black doctor here, leading civil rights activist, one of the first blacks on the Shelby County Quarterly Court. It was named for him after he passed away. You got the Donnelly Hill building, who was a state legislator. Here over you got the Clifford O. Davis and Odell Horton Federal building. Well, now, Odell Horton was a great judge here, an African-American judge in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. But Clifford O. Davis was KKK in the 1920s, white man. So that hadn't been taken off the building yet. I just want to show you sometimes the juxtaposition of names on buildings and how taste change in periods. No name has ever been put on the City Hall as far as a former mayor or a leading citizen or whatever. Over here, we'll walk away that way in just a minute. As we started suburbanizing our country after World War II, people started going out to the east. Downtown started emptying out. Memphis, with the desegregation, with the King assassination, again with all those other factors, residential areas were built in the suburban areas. Offices followed, schools, branch hospitals, waiting rooms, all that stuff. And the core of downtown started eroding in the 1970s. By 1973, the Peabody Hotel had closed. From 77 to 83, Beale Street was fenced off. You couldn't walk around down Beale Street. Only two businesses was open. One was A. Schwab, you had to enter from the alley. One was Hutkins Hardware that finally closed. In 1982, the Lorraine Motel had been closed and was bought on the courthouse steps for $144,000. In 1975, the Peabody was bought for $540,000. By 1979, there was more people living in jail in downtown Memphis than living residentially. It was just gone. In the 1950s and 60s, there was 572 acres. Let's see, like 32 projects that removed over 3,000 buildings in the urban renewal phase of our downtown core, right outside the core all around. You still see a lot of those vacant lands now. That's how we built FedEx Forum and Gibson Guitar and Weston. You're starting to see some of that development. It just didn't come back real quick. It was urban removal, not urban renewal, so we got it. And so that took the base out of downtown as well. And then when the Peabody Hotel reopened in 81, that was the catalyst for downtown coming back. In 1976, this was a big pedestrian mall, the world's longest pedestrian mall, or the country's longest pedestrian mall, 1 mile from basically Exchange Street down to McCall, which is now Peabody Place. And they thought that would, making this a mall and putting trees in, no trolley yet. Right here where we're standing, there's a big old circular fountain. If you remember, the big old fountain that we'd swim in and all that stuff. We had Oktoberfest here on the Civic Center Plaza. You know, up until 1982, Mud Island hadn't opened yet. So Beale Street was closed. Nobody really had thought of Tom Lee Park yet, you know. So this is where kind of a public meeting area. That's why the monorail from Mud Island comes into this area. It was designed in the 70s and 80s. Rather than thinking about the core of the city might be that way, not this way. You come in here after 5 o'clock at night, ain't nothing going on in here. All these buildings, office employees, government employees have gone home because it's a Civic Center Plaza. So after a while, in 1976, July 4th, Mid-America Mall was dedicated, is what it was called. Gerald Ford, the president, came and dedicated it. And that lasted about, 12 or so years, and then they started having these transportation grants, and that's where we got 85% funding for the trolley system. That's not a bad deal. If somebody's gonna give you 85%, you gotta match it with 15%, but guess what? 100% of the operation is your responsibility for the rest of your life. We found the hardship of that without managing or maintaining our trolleys very well. That opened in 1993 from basically just north of the Pinch District there where the trolley barn is, all the way down to Central Station. In 1997, the loop opened up, picking up an old spare railroad track around the riverfront, connecting back into the train station. 2005, I believe it was, the Madison line connected or right past Cleveland, almost to Overland Square. If you've ever thought you could get off the trolley and walk to Overland Square, don't. Don't when you've had too much to drink either. And you can't find a single person you know in the 17 bars in between there to get you a ride. You know? But it doesn't go all the way to Overland Square, and I doubt if it ever will. I don't think it needs to because that'd tear up Overland Square. It's got a good build what it is right now. They don't need it, I don't think. But so that's how the trolley got built and changed the shape of all this. Center City Commission got formed in 1977. It's now called Downtown Memphis Commission to do the marketing and promotion of downtown, try to get some of these buildings filled up, give facade loans, things like that, promote activities. And they moved over here to the building you see right over here on Adams Avenue in Maine, the Crump building we say. What we're going to do right now, and when we built the trolley here, the lines had to be straight, so we had to take up that fountain. They put little bitty fountains over here that they don't run anymore, but we won't talk about that. And had this straight line, so they built the clock tower right here. That was 1993, okay? We got the clock tower in. Let's go over here, and we're gonna walk over to the Mud Island Walk Bridge for a second, look back at the city, about a third the way. Then come back and go down Adams Avenue, okay? So let's go this way. Yeah. Back in the 1880s, 1890s, there were streetcars on iron tracks like all over the country. I mean, all the way out to the fairgrounds, all the way out to Raleigh. That old bus lane that went through Overton Park by the zoo, went, curved at National, went all the way to Raleigh, you know. And then by post-World War II, you got the rubber-tired trolleys, so all the tracks got brought up. And the trolley cars, or street cars, got sold for like $30,000. We bought them back at first for like $300,000, and what's the cost now?
Currently under renovation, $1 million.
To buy one and to renovate it, $1 million. So we had like 2 burn up a few years ago. They had to put the whole system out, redo the maintenance. So street cars were around. They went to rubber tire trolleys. That all got pulled up. We went automobile crazy post-World War II, expressways, all that. And so this is one way. And the way this got sold here is, you know, a rubber-tired vehicle can go anywhere, but you know where that iron rail is. You know something's going to come along that iron rail. It's always going to be there in the ground, kind of like the Underground Railroad. That's how it got its title, because that Underground Railroad, not underground, but it led to civilization. They traveled under the cover of night, kind of underground. There never was an underground railroad, but figurative speech. All right, so here we go. Memphis in May, about 20 years ago, they honored their first 20 countries they had honored. It also started in 1977 to honor a foreign country and bring attention to Memphis around the world. Japan was the first country honored. You might find a Japanese flag down there somewhere. You see, I see Canada, I see England. I mean, if you look up, you can't identify these things, but their names are all on the bottom. So Willie, you're standing right in front of Russia there. You're colluding with the Russians right now, Willie, on this filming, okay? So they're honored here. These are just the first 20. They've honored 40 different countries, I believe, during their 40-year, three-year history. I think it was the Netherlands and Japan and one other were honored twice. I can't think of the third one. And then this past year, right now, Memphis and Shelby County for the bicentennial. If you look at the south point of Mud Island, there's 7 flagpoles about the flags that have claimed the land on which the city of Memphis is located. So they're down there. These aren't none of these flags. Well, Spain, France, Great Britain, North Carolina, Tennessee, United States, Confederate States. Those are the 7 flags that are mentioned. And this is kind of a nice sculpt or whatever, art project, urban sculpture about the river, I guess, is settling in here. You got a Liberty Bell donated by William and Dixie Walbrook. Bill Walbrook was a former park commissioner, chairman, and in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s when I was there. Very big with the Liberty Bowl Association. The Liberty Bowl came to Memphis in 1965 when the Liberty Bowl Stadium opened as Memphis Memorial Stadium. It wasn't until 1977 it got changed to Liberty Bowl Memorial Stadium. And if you look through all the records, this would be a good project for you. Go find me where they renamed Liberty Bowl.
Okay.
Didn't happen legally at Park Commission or City Council. Just go ahead. Or you can do that, can't you? That's when the big flag that's on the top of the building went out from the commercial appeal out there too. But Liberty Bowl was the first. It started in Philadelphia, had 1 year in Atlantic City in 1964, and it's the first NCAA football game ever played indoors. It was inside the convention center, Atlantic City. It wasn't an indoor stadium or anything. It's just they happened to play in the wintertime. It has that claim. Has 4 Heisman Trophy winners. It's a great economic impact. AutoZone Liberty Bowl now is a good thing. Now you look at some of these buildings. Unfortunately, after 9/11, we can't go inside these buildings like we used to and look at some of the features in the lobbies. And you go in here, there's some features on this wall, right when you get through the scanners, there's some features of birds in there. There's some flags in there. It's a neat lobby right in there. Over here you have the Hall of Mayors. You got exhibits from various city agencies. You got a bell from the USS Memphis in there. You got all the portraits of the former mayors in there. So unfortunately we can't go in those areas right now. So let's go around. Let's go on the walk bridge to Mud Island here. Now below us here is the Tennessee Welcome Center. It used to be an 800-car parking lot here in 1985 when I was general manager of Mud Island. We didn't have the second set of ramps here. We came in to this parking lot by Adams Avenue right here. And in the fall of 1989, we get 800 cars parked in here in the morning of Friday morning. And at lunchtime, I started getting phone calls over at Mud Island. The entrance had been blocked off because the state had come, TDOT, to start doing the construction to build these ramps right here. I said, wait a minute, we got to get these 800 cars out of here. So that's when we had to quickly build an entrance to Jefferson of this parking lot, because they just come in and not tell us they're going to block us off that day. We had cars parked in there. So sometimes, so that's one of the funny stories. Used to have the Cotton Makers Jubilee Midway down here, Cotton Carnival Midways down here in the 50s and 60s. You saw pictures of that. This is the area right in here. And again, when this was the industrial waterfront of Memphis between 1850s all the way up to the 1950s, all the way up the harbor here, you had buildings and warehouses, and you can see like that bridge right out there that lead to where the barges came up to offload product and everything. All up through this harbor, you'll still see some of those. All the way down to about where Tom Lee Park, about to the middle of Tom Lee Park. Those warehouses up there, they were conveyor belts going up to there. You know, Riverside Drive didn't come till 1935. It's almost 1:30.
Yep, 1:31 and a half.
See, one long whistle, three short whistles. The boat's leaving the dock. Now it's going over to Beale Street Landing. And at 2:30, you'll hear those whistles again when they leave to go out in the river. So that's a mandatory signal. See, he's backing out right now. You get tuned to things like this. When I worked here, I could tell you when the monorail was running. I'd be in an office over there. I could tell you when there's a train going across the bridge a mile away. You know, you hear sounds besides weed eaters. And that's what you can tell time by. So Riverside Drive came in 1935. The railroad tracks came in the early 1980s, late 1970s down in there, because Front Street was the front street to the river. You see, Jefferson Davis Park, now called River Garden, was built in 1935. It had a little sister park on the other side called Astor Park, A-S-T-O-R. That's where Beale Street Landing is now. That got changed to Tom Lee Park in 1954. Astor was for the Astoria Fur Company that did furs out here. John Jacob Astor later died on the Titanic, a descendant of the Astor name. And then Tom Lee Park got expanded in the 90s. You can see the bluff. You can see right here a good example how this bluff goes up. Now, what we used to call Confederate Park is now Fourth Bluff. Back during the Civil War, it was sloped down just like the streets. That didn't get built out at Front Street level until 1907. That's when the park was added in, okay, 1907. The garage here got built in 1955, along with the sister garage down on South Front, just on the other side of the law school at Monroe, to pick up the increased demand, because when we built these buildings in here in the 20s and 30s, we didn't have all the automobiles like we had now, but after World War II, we had so many automobiles. This garage right here that has the Comfort Inn on it was built by the Klarich House because people were coming by automobiles. Now, they had to do that. The Steric building had it. That garage next to the Steric building has a hotel on top of it. It was built in the 50s for the Steric building. Chisca's was built in 1961. There used to be a little motor court there. They still have the garage there. Peabody had a garage built into it. It's now where Peabody Place Mall is. So they all had to adjust to everybody coming by automobiles rather than by other forms of transportation into the city. And now we're on the Monorail Bridge, and the architect designed this to have a big curve in it. That's the world's only curved single cable underhanging monorail. That's a challenge for the monorail system. But when you're riding that monorail and you come around this curve, it makes it look like these buildings are moving. You get different views of this whole as you're passing through, and all of a sudden here comes the Lincoln American Tower. When we walk back down here 100 feet this way, you won't be able to see the Lincoln American Tower at all. So it's very creative to have that big curve like that, and to have the monorail underhanging so you could view below you the river. We can't see it right now with all this bridge in front, but you're looking at those cars looking out, those glass windows, you can see everything underneath there, and this isn't blocking you here. This is about, 1,600 to 1,800 feet long from Front Street Station all the way around to the river center. And when you get over to the river center, it was designed to be a one-time experience, really, for the tourist of coming in at the 5th level, and you're riding the monorail over, you're seeing all these things changing, you're coming along the riverfront, you get to Mud Island, now you see the river and the delta when you come off on the 5th level, come down on the 4th level, come down on the 3rd level, the plaza level, 2nd level in the museum, you do the 18-gallery museum, and you come right out at Memphis on the Riverwalk. You see right where the river is. That's how that was designed, one-time experience. We put a lot of events on there. The Welcome Center came in 1998. State Welcome Center. That's the State of Tennessee Welcome Center. Memphis has a counter in there, but that's a full-blown, that's your entry portal from the west to the state of Tennessee. There's a Welcome Center down at I-55 in Whitehaven from the state of Mississippi coming in, you see. A state Welcome Center at Brooks Road in Elvis Presley. There's a City of Memphis-owned Welcome Center. And out in Arlington at exit 2425, there's a city-owned Memphis Welcome Center there. So there's plenty of welcome centers around. You got the statue of B.B. King in there and of Elvis both in there. The Elvis statue came from Beale Street earlier. Nedak Bobo designed that building. If you look at Greg Nedak's house over on Mud Island, it's very similar to that building right there. He was building at the same time. Of course, you had Lone Star Concrete. You might remember that. It was still a viable industry up until a few years ago. They got torn out. That green space is made there. Of course, there's the Pyramid. We've talked about it earlier today. Civic Center Plaza, Convention Center, undergoing renovation there. And then come back around. Let's just look at a couple of buildings here real quick. The iBank building built in what, 72, 73? It was One Commerce Square at Main and Monroe. Raymond James building was built as Morgan Keegan Tower. It opened in 1987. It's the former site of the Hotel King Cotton, or the Elks Hotel, or the Hotel Devoy. That's several names. It got imploded in 1984. Lincoln American Tower, which I think is the prettiest building in downtown Memphis, particularly at night when you're out on the river. It just has the lights on it at night. It's a big old white beacon out there in the middle of the night. And it's beautiful. The little cupola up there, to get into it, you see the green roof up there. That's about a 4,000-gallon water tank up in there that supplied the building. And you got to walk around it, a diagonal staircase, walk around it, get up above it, and there's a spiral staircase to get you to a hatch like this. You push up the hatch, you climb out the ladder, put the hatch back down, and you're 8 feet by 8 feet up there, 22 stories high. You're like on the front of the Titanic. You feel like Leonardo DiCaprio like that. No glass windows or anything. Got a railing there. It's totally safe. And you get a bird's eye view of Court Square. You can see down, because it was the tallest building in Memphis when it was built. You can see Tom Lee Park. You can see the Pyramid. You can see into right field of AutoZone Park. You can see out Sears Crosstown. You can't see 100 North Main blocks you right in front of it, or Morgan Keegan blocks you straight ahead. But there's still some great views up there. And now it's 100% occupied residentially. It was built by Columbia Mutual Life Insurance that became Lincoln American later on. Lloyd Benford was the president, who became the president of the censor board here for 30 years. And a very famous censor. We censored more movies than anybody in America. It's called being Benfordized in the industry. He just didn't like a lot of things going on in Memphis, and that's a whole nother story. The Renaissance building here was the Lowenstein Tower. Lowenstein's opened in Memphis in the 1880s. Had 3 buildings downtown, built the Poplar Plaza building in the 1940s, one in Whitehaven. They built the lower portion where you see the parking garage. That was the retail store. And the residence above it, 1969, when Morgan Keegan Tower, now Raymond James, got built, they converted the retail into a parking garage to satisfy their needs a little bit. And that's going to be, when you go in a parking garage, the ceiling's about 7.5 feet high, right? Well, they couldn't configure this department store to where they could get the right amount of, so they're like 12-story or 12-foot high ceilings in that parking garage. It's really weird. Comfort Inn used to be called a Pilot House Motor Inn in the 70s. Us guys at First Baptist Church took turns. The Griffin family ran it. We come down at night, answer the phones, and ran it for a while as college-age kids. Pilot House Motor Inn. Klarich Outs, we'll go down there in just a minute. Any questions up here? Looking around? Okay, let's go back this way. My favorite, by far, is called Quilts Around. They've taken old, damaged city signs. You can see the sign, the colors of them in here. You can see some of the letters on some of them as you look through. Particularly that pattern, and made them into quilt patterns. Greeley Mayette was the artist, Urban Art Commission project. We have Roof Flung Like Liquid over there at the Convention Center. We had over there at St. Mary's Church, we had the razor wire that was very creative, So you'll see urban art around, but and what this does, it serves a second purpose. Normally when you have an air conditioning unit, you have a chain link fence up and these going through a diagonal, going through those old metal things, and some get bent and torn up, or a green scrim on it. This is covering up the air conditioning unit for City Hall. They used to be on the roof, so it serves 2 purposes. Covering that up and being a wonderful urban art project all the way around. So all the different quilts are different all the way around. That's really cool. Almost as cool as Best Dressed. All right, we got the Klarich House here, built in 1924. It's a hotel called the Klarich Hotel. On the top of it was the Balinese Ballroom. In 1939 we get the Peabody Skyway Room. In 19 12, we get the Alaskan Roof Garden on top of the Falls building where W.C. Haney premiered the St. Louis Blues, 1916. Balinese Ballroom, just another one of those rooftop hotel ballrooms, swing music, other bands and stuff like that. In the 1950s, a movie called A Face in the Crowd. Have you heard that movie? Andy Griffith was in it. Some of the scenes were filmed in this building. Lonesome Roads, I think is what his name is. It's a great movie. Anything Andy Griffith besides Matlock. You got those Andy Griffiths on like at 5 o'clock in the morning. They're really good. It got converted in the 1980s to apartments and then later on to condos. And it's been doing good for 30 years here for residential. 1965, we opened the 100 North Main building. It's the tallest building in Memphis. It's 421 feet tall. When I was 12 years old as a kid, I'd put my swimming suit on in East Memphis and get on a bus and ride it down here. And we'd go up to the next to the top floor. They had a swimming pool up there. And you'd swim in the swimming pool. And then we can't see it from here, but on the top of that building, they have a round restaurant, a revolving restaurant. It took 1 hour for it to go one revolution around, so it wasn't spinning around like a carousel. Called the Top of the 100 Club. And that was cool for about 2 months, and then we found a swimming pool closer to home, you know. And they had a Japanese roof garden up there too. And then again, they were trying to do things like the Rivermont Club down at the Holiday Inn Rivermont on the south end of town. You could have a membership club like a country club. Not to play golf, maybe to play a little tennis, had like 8 tennis courts. But trying to get people to stay downtown, come downtown, it just really didn't work out. The building lasted pretty good for about 20 years, and again, the other buildings being built out in East Memphis and the continued shift out east. Finally closed about 6 or 7 years ago. And they finally drained it down intentionally so they could make it available for either residential or hotel or both. And that's still on the drawing plans. The city has plans maybe to build a brand new building right over here with another company. I think this is Townhouse over here, and this is Lowe's over here, this is Lowe's over here, and this is Townhouse over here. Lowe's over here. L-O-E-W-S, not Lowe's Hardware. Okay? Not a Lowe's hardware store over here. Okay? And you've seen the modern new design, and now now the Sheraton's chipped in because they've been here. They're the convention center hotel, 600 room, and now the city, if they're subsidizing or giving grants or pilot programs to a new building, now you got 3 here. It gets kind of a little competitive. Can they all 3 work? So we got to find out how they figure that out, and will the renovations to the convention center bring the demand to have? We do need more hotel rooms. We don't need any more 100-room boutique hotels, or maybe the smaller boutique hotels that are really unique, but we don't need those 125 rooms here, there, here, there, here, there. The conventions need them all in one spot, within walking distance. And then you got to have some streetscape around those hotels. You know, there's nothing between here and Beale Street. Think about it, much and very little on the north side of the folks in these hotels at night to go to. Can't just walk right into something. So that's something they got to think about as well as we build this and make it a better neighborhood for the visitors coming in. Again, all those $175 million to $200 million renovations to the convention center are being paid by the visitors, not by the local general fund. It's paid by the extra taxes put on the visitors coming to Memphis. So that helps a little bit and soften the blow on that. Again, this is the Crump building, and see how unusual it is. Well, he had a real estate and mortgage and insurance empire in here. Mr. Crump's office is on the 3rd floor, right? And the upper tower is not being used. Downtown Memphis Commission is all here in the center. We're going to take a quick break and walk in there for a second. Hey, it says 1901 or so. This was the North Memphis Savings Bank. If you go back to the Pence District or the Balinese Ballroom, the Walsh brothers were big grocers here. They had their own bank. John Walsh was on the courthouse committee to get it designed. And their first deposit was on April the 4th, 1904. 04, okay? And I think one of the North Memphis Savings Bank portraits on the wall back there by the model too. So again, the 100 North Main building, let's go this way. This building is 1910, that building is 1911 is the way I understand it. Wow. 1910 for the courthouse to open. So this was the fire department and the police station. It closed in 81 when they opened up the only building in Memphis you know by its number rather than its name, 201. Now for all y'all on the trivia questions, the courts are in 201, the jail's in 225. So when I ask you where is the jail in downtown Memphis, you say 201, I'm gonna go, kind of like, all right, This is, look at this building here, but look at its address. 100 North Main. We're on Adams Avenue. We're not on North Main, right? Okay. It's the name of the building is 100 North Main building. But it's on Main, but why does that say 100 North Main? We're on Adams.
It's a side entrance.
I understand, but it says 100 North Main. This is Adams Avenue, not North Main. All right, hey, looky here. This is the Fire Museum. It opened 1998 as a wonderful, very instructional, informative museum about history of fires in Memphis and the gallantry of our firemen, our good record, education in there. I know about a month after it first opened, a school group had been in here and some kid had a fire at his house and he'd learned something up here when they go through one of these demonstrations up here to smoke in the home, duck or crawl, and they got out to safety. So yeah, fire education does work. You come on in here to the plaza. And I think at my last count, it was 51 firemen have given their life in service. Got killed by fire, let's say. And here's the memorial wall right here. The plaque right to the right of there, the black plaque, honors the whole company in New York City that got wiped out in 9/11. See the FDNY 343 right there. Couple old fire engines. Again, nice demonstration stuff in here. About, I think it's September of every year, you'll come out here, maybe a couple times a year, they'll actually have a big fire truck out, a hook and ladder with the flag out, and they do bagpipes and ceremonies and just honor, whether somebody's died or not that year, honor the whole collective effort of our fire department. That's kind of neat. So this is a good museum. There's 20 museums in downtown Memphis, folks. It's a virtual Disneyland without walls when you think about it. If you look at the variety of attractions we have, from Mississippi River Museum, Cotton Museum, Center for Southern Folklore, Belts Museum of Asian Judaic Art, Memphis Music Hall of Fame, Blues Hall of Fame, National Civil Rights Museum, National Ornamental Museum, Fire Museum, Slave Haven Burkle Estate, courthouse tours, Victorian Village, Sun Studio. I consider Stacks in downtown, you know, Memphis Rock and Soul Museum, on and on and on. There's so much to do with the variety of it. It's just a great place to come. Our tourists really like it. We get 11 million tourists a year into Memphis now, and it's about a $3.2 billion annual economic impact. Employs about 55,000 people in Memphis. So it's our third leading industry is tourism. Second's hospitals and health cares. First is transportation, distribution, and logistics. River, railways, roadways, runways, you know. Let's go this way. Memphis Police Headquarters are in Civic Center Plaza. Sheriff Department's over here. And the sheriff runs the jail, right? This was actually bought about 3 years ago to be a boutique hotel. Seriously, they were going to convert it into a hotel property. Looks like it didn't work. We always joked with them, people used to kill to get in there, now they're paying money to go in there, right? Calvary Episcopal Church right here, just a beautiful building. I consider it the oldest public assembly structure in Memphis because it's a church and public assembly, like dating back to the late 1830s, early 1840s. Probably the number one thing Calvary is known for, besides saving souls, is the waffle shop, not Waffle House. I always say Waffle House. I try to always stop. You got me there. Waffle shop in the Lenten season, the preaching series, the combination. Not just waffles. There's other great food too, but last 4 to 5 weeks, depending on the length of Lent that year. Just a wonderful thing right there. Get a little time out. You can see the rebuilt First United Methodist Church. It now has the same steeple like it had before. It took them 12 years to get there, you know. So we're glad to see that. They do have a lot of community service programs coming out of there. Let's go. When we do our Court Square tour, you see the back side of the Birch Porter Johnson building, the Moorish looking building right there. It was built as a Tennessee club back in like the 1890s. It was a social business club, and Birch Porter Johnson's been there about 40 years now, one of the leading law firms. Lucius Birch was a great lawyer, conservationist, environmentalist. He represented Dr. King in April 4th. He got on April 4th, he and Mike Cody and Andrew Young got that court order lifted over at the federal building. And Mike Cody drove Andrew Young back to the Lorraine Motel, dropped him off. By the time Mike Cody got home, he heard on the radio King had been shot. He'd have marched the next day, he'd have been out of here. Who knows? Or maybe, who knows, but something was going to happen sooner or later. We all know that. Just happened to happen in Memphis. But Mike Cody's still around. Charlie Newman's still around. Charlie was the attorney for Citizens to Preserve Overton Park out of that law firm, another great case. And for Big River Crossing as well. Just an incredible project. 2 cities, 2 counties, 2 states, the federal government, the railroad, a lot of architects, a lot of lawyers, a lot of insurance men too. A lot to get that project done. All right, let's go down. Now, come right into here. Sometime in July and August when I come back in town, we probably do a B.B. King Boulevard tour from basically here to Claiborne Temple. And we'll catch those alleys that are being worked on too. But this right here, the Shelby County Courthouse, now called the Judge DeArmy Bailey Courthouse. A judge, before that time, a lawyer, a civil rights activist, then a judge, and a movie star, in like The People versus Larry Flint. He was one of the judges in that out of Memphis. I think he's the one that Larry Flint spit on or something, or Woody Harrelson spit on. You know, Larry Flint was actually a judge in that movie too. Woody Harrelson played Larry Flint. Larry Flint was a judge. We had a lot of fun in that movie. But when he was a lawyer and civil rights activist, he's the one that led the group that spent $144,000 right on these steps right here when the Lorraine Motel was auctioned in 1982. He got his last $4,000 from Jack Belts, is what he told me one night at the Blues Ball. July 31st, 1975, off these steps right here, the Peabody Hotel was bought for $540,000 by the Belts Corporation. They spent $25 million in 5 years restoring it. It reopened in 1981. It's been the catalyst project and symbol for downtown Memphis. Getting ready to have the first Peabody opened in 1869 at Main and Monroe, so they're getting ready to celebrate their sesquicentennial as a hotel this September. You'll be hearing a lot about that. And at that location since 1925. Now, this building, this Blue Bedford limestone, it opened in 1910. It took 4 years to build, 27 different plans. There's a Blue Ribbon Committee of Citizens studying it real hard. In fact, during the building of it, if we go in the inside, when we do the inside tour, you'll see where even when they were building it, things were changing so fast. They went from gas to electrical, but they'd already drilled the gas pipes through the marble. So they took the wires and ran them through the gas pipes that had already been laid rather than cutting new holes in the marble when you go in this building. So this is Blue Bedford limestone here. These 6 statues you have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they're all made out of a single block of Tennessee marble, the largest of their kind in the country. Prosperity, peace, authority, liberty, wisdom, and justice. They got their names written on them right there, okay? That's how I remember that. In fact, when you go into this tour, you can bring a camera when you go on my tour. The only time you can bring a camera in here, because they don't allow cameras after 9/11 and intimidating witnesses or whatever. You can't bring a gun or your nail file, kind of like going to the airport. So I usually over on the back side of Miss Liberty's skirts where I hide all the fingernail files and pocket knives before we go in. We pick them up afterwards, you see. They are marble. They don't look like they're marble, look granite, but back in the 1980s when they were cleaning up the building, an overzealous pressure washer kind of pocked them up. That's why they look kind of ragged as marble. The sculptor's name is Massey Rind, R-H-I-N-D. His name is on the back side of each one of those statues too. There's a whole book. Have you got that book yet? There's a whole book about the history of Shelby County Courthouse. It tells a lot of these details. Now look above us there at the triangular pediment. That's called a pediment. Inside the pediment is a scene, S-C-E-N-E. At the very top of the pediment, that's the head of Emmy Dunn. No, that's the head of Minerva, the Roman goddess of wisdom, okay? And she's in a lot of the light sconces inside the building as well as you go through the hallways. And each scene represents a different aspect of law. So again, there's 6 of these scenes at 6 different entrances to the building representing criminal, civil, this is statutory, common, religious, and Roman law. There's a different scene in every one of them, okay? This tree right here is a tulip poplar tree. It was planted on the 75th anniversary in 1984. There's a sign over there in front of it that says so. And the guy that planted it still works here. His name's on that sign. But most of the tulip poplar trees you see might be like in Overton Park, and they might be 150 feet tall. So this is like a 30-year-old tulip poplar tree. It grows in all 95 counties. On the Washington Avenue side, when we go back around over there, there's 6 other statues on top of the building. We'll talk about them when we get over there. They represent integrity, courage, mercy, prudence, temperance, and learning. And we'll talk about them over there. All that information I just told you are on these two plaques right here, these two historical markers by the Shelby County Historical Commission. Boom and boom. Those are 4 different texts on those panels, has all that information right there. See, you can find your information in a lot of places, you know. Now, when you go up these steps, you go into the corridor there. There's 7 different kinds of marble on the interior from 4 different states, Alabama, Vermont, let's see, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee. Obviously, East Tennessee marble. Cuban mahogany wood throughout, all sorts of stories in there. This south hallway had 6 different display cabinets of history in there. And as we walk down here, we'll look at the Andrew Jackson bust from outside. So let's walk down this way. The window between these 2 columns right here in front of me, the left pane, you can vaguely see an outline of a bust that's the shape of Andrew Jackson. Okay, that was cast on Andrew Jackson in the 1835 in the White House. It's the oldest known bust cast on a sitting president of the White House of record in the United States. Okay, it got brought to Memphis in 1859, put in Court Square. And in 1862, it got vandalized by a Southern sympathizer. Even though Jackson was dead and gone, a co-founder of Memphis, a United States president from Tennessee, he represented the Northern presidency, so it was defaced. And on the pedestal side, when you go in there, you'll see a quote that says, "Our federal union, it shall and must be preserved," right on it. That was Jackson's famous statement. Basically, the name of why Union Avenue is named Union Avenue. Okay? And so it's all there, plus his 4 major battles, the sculptor's name, John Frazee. He was one of there's 12 people, I think, in the National Art Guild at that time. He was the only sculptor. So it was a very distinguished sculptor that sculpted it. It's had a little wear and tear. It got put on display here in 1921. So it's come 2021, there ought to be a 100th anniversary of the Andrew Jackson bust. Now you get into a little bit of controversy because of Andrew Jackson and the removal of Native Americans across the country. You know, so we're going to get into 2-sided history of stuff. You know, he was incredible. There was things about every March 15th since 2013, the Piamingo chapter of the United States Daughters of 1812 have had a happy birthday, Andrew Jackson, General Jackson, okay? It's a tradition that was started back in the middle of the century that quit in the 1960s. They laid a wreath there. We go into Judge Russell's courtroom. We pledge allegiance to the flag. We salute the state flag, the War of 1812 flag. We sing the national anthem. Boy Scouts bring the flags in. We have a couple of patriotic talks. We talk about who Jackson actually, as a father, adopted Native Americans as children. Not many people know about that. He was the first president to have a toilet in the White House. There's all sorts of weird stats. He's the only president to ever sell American land. There's a lot of little weird stats about Jackson. In fact, he had such bad handwriting, he would sign, he couldn't spell good either. And for memos, he would sign all correct and spell correct with a K, and his A looked like a big O, and finally he shortened that to OK. They say that's where OK came from, the term OK. I don't know if that's true or not. That's why I say that, but I've heard that. But there's other good little weird stats about Jackson. Now, obviously, the Native American, or the Indian Removal Act as it was, impacted our country a lot. One of the more horrible things about our history, let's say, of how a lot of those Native Americans got led straight up to the north, into the snow. So they got a little bit smart, took the southern route through Memphis, which is Stage Road. And we're putting up a historical marker over here on November 23rd, Graydon Swisher is. Like you see the one down there at Bill Street Landing, a graphic marker that talks about the water route of the Trail of Tears. The water route went from Chattanooga up to Paducah, down to Memphis, to Arkansas River, through Little Rock to Oklahoma. 3,000 Native Americans were moved by barge. And the land route came straight across southern Tennessee, across the river about where the pyramid is, old military road to Marion, to Little Rock, to Fort Coffee. We're doing a marker there. Trail of Tears Association. We'll have a ceremony. Most of it will be in Choctaw, not in English too, by the way. Our last one was. I think I was the only English speaker there that day, and I guess they understood me, I don't know. I did hear kind of a weird story that she walks more than anybody I know, and in the wintertime she walks inside here. You're supposed to be inside. Okay. I mean, you'll see her down at Front Street Deli. You'll see her everywhere. They say on the reservations now they won't cash $20 bills. You won't, cause Andrew Jackson's on the back of the $20 bill. You don't see a $20 bill at a reservation. So, a lot of those Native American lands do have casinos on them. They're sovereign. I took a train ride from LA to Kansas City one time, and when you go through New Mexico and Arizona, you go through a lot of Navajo Nation there, and they allow Navajo guides to come on and tell you stories on the daytime portion of the drive. It's really neat, you know. But there's a lot to be said about that. When we come out and we get around the statue at the end of the ceremony, and we have a cake we cut, we drink blackberry fizz, which is Andrew Jackson's favorite drink, and we sing 8,000 Redcoats, See How They Run, to the tune of Three Blind Mice. Twice. Because that's when Jackson went into New Orleans and built January 6, 1815, after a 3-year benign War of 1812. Elvis's birthday. He runs the British out of New Orleans a month after the treaty had already been signed. The word hadn't got here from Europe yet. And that's where the Tennessee Volunteers comes in. The name of Tennessee Volunteers in the Battle of New Orleans. That's it, the Tennessee Volunteers. 8,000 Redcoats, 8,000 Redcoats, see how they run, see how they run. It's so cool. And we're singing in the hallway there. It's echoing all over the hallway. They just love it. Once a year we get irreverent with it. Also, on the 200th anniversary of the War of 1812 was the most important war to Memphis, by the way, not the Civil War, not the Revolutionary War. You think about it. 1795, the Spanish signed a treaty clearing out east of the Mississippi, north of New Orleans. 1803, Louisiana purchased with the French. They're gone. Spanish gone by 1803. That leaves the British. War of 1812, Chesapeake Bay, Lake Erie, New Orleans, the three theaters of battles. 3-year-old benign war, last battle 1850. They burned the White House. You know, if you go up to the Peabody Hotel and see the piano on the mezzanine floor, that's a piano that was made for Francis Scott Key. You know who Francis Scott Key is, don't you? Who is he? What was his profession?
I don't know his profession, but he was poet, or did he write the...
He was a lawyer.
I know he wrote the...
Yeah, he was a lawyer who in 1813, I think it was, went across to meet with the British captain on the boat, trying to get prisoners released, you know, and there was Fort McHenry over out in the harbor, and the flag was standing. And the captain kind of scoffed at him. See all those little docks out there in Chesapeake Bay? That's the British Navy coming to burn this place down. And Francis Scott Key left. And the next morning he woke up and the flag was still standing over Fort McHenry. The flag was still there, you know, dawn's early light. So he wrote a poem called In the Defense of Fort McHenry from that experience. This is why our national anthem is so hard to sing. We blame it on the Peabody Hotel and the piano over there, by the way. But our national anthem is a poem written by a lawyer about a fort that we sing to the tune of a British drinking song. Now, is that not the worst combination of any song ever? That's worse than the blues, isn't it? That's what it is. And I think Al Ceran's a British drinking song. It's the hardest song in the world to sing. That's why I like going to the Kiwanis Club, because they sing God Bless America. That's easier, you know. No, it's hard to sing. But that piano was made for Francis Scott Key in 1838. It was here at a piano company in Memphis, Pons and Ivy, and they rented their piano space, warehouse space from the Belts Corporation. They couldn't pay their rent. So they gave them that piano in lieu of payment of rent. And the Beltses put it up in the Peabody Hotel, 1838 piano made for Francis Scott Key. That's pretty cool. So we sing our song, we do our thing. And then down here in the southeast quarter, we put up 2 plaques in 2013. And the National Society, I was one of 30 people in the country to win an award from the National Society of Daughters of 1812. I got a medal, just like my spelling bee medal, next medal. And there's a plaque there for the 32 War of 1812 soldiers that are buried in Shelby County. Okay, they fought. Just like over here in this side, there's a plaque with 19 names of 19 soldiers that fought in the Revolutionary War. Got land grants, migrated this way, died here, buried here. So we got 19 Revolutionary War, 32 War of 1812, 16 of which are in Elmwood, which we just did last November, did an obelisk for them, the 16 in Elmwood. And then there's also a plaque for Isaac Shelby, who our county's named for, who he and Andrew Jackson negotiated this whole West Tennessee area in 1818, 6.8 million acres of land at 4.5 cents an acre for $330,000 and 20 annual payments of $50,000 each. It's now 21 counties, so we named our county Shelby County. He was from Kentucky, by the way. He never lived in Memphis or Tennessee. He was the governor of Kentucky in a War of 1812 and Revolutionary War general. Jackson is buried at Hermitage in Nashville as General Jackson and not President Jackson, by the way, too. He liked being a general more than president, apparently. So obviously there's a lot of stories in here. You look at the architecture, and you go inside, and you go into courtrooms, and visit the case. It's a really neat tour. So when we come back, one of our next tours later in the summer to get more footage in will be the interior here. And we're going to look and see what places we missed in downtown Memphis too. Okay, let's go this way. Maggie Isabel Street right there is an alley named for Maggie Isabel, who was a seamstress for about 55 years in downtown. And when she died, she'd done so much good work, I guess for so many attorneys or doctors or whatever, they named this alley for her. It goes all the way to Monroe. From Monroe to Union, it's named Charlie Burger's Rendezvous Alley, okay? Now this building right here opened in 1985. It was going to be called One Memphis Place. They couldn't get anybody to occupy it, so they called it One Empty Place. And then they put the Bankruptcy Court in there, and because we lead the country in bankruptcy filings, it filled up real quick. They called it the Darth Vader building as well. That's its other nickname. St. Peter Catholic Church, the oldest diocese, 1840, so that's 179 years now. Here's a cool story, come over here. The first sanctuary was a lot smaller, okay? I say about 1/10 the size of this building here. And it stood for about 50 years. And when they decided to build the new sanctuary, they built it around it. And then when they completed the new sanctuary, they tore that one down and took it out the front door piece by piece. So there's times during the course of the year, they'll have like little string lights in there showing you the outline of the original small sanctuary right there. Isn't that cool? You can look right over there past that parking sign, past that parking meter, says something, First Post Office or something like that. It's a beautiful sesquicentennial sign that's been recently repainted, by the way. But on June 6, 1862, when we had that naval battle of Memphis, right down here at that corner, down there is where at Jefferson and 3rd was where the post office was located. But since they built that building on that part of the square, they moved the marker back over here. But that was where the post office was during the naval battle of Memphis in the Civil War. So when you hear accounts of putting a flag up on top of the post office, it wasn't the one over there on Front Street, which everybody thinks has been there forever. It's been there since 1885 and 1929. So this is where the post office was then, and that's what that marker states right there. Come on and see the oldest residence in Memphis. Remember now I tell you stories about 157 different kinds of manhole covers out of 2,000 in downtown Memphis. And here's a couple of good. This is Courthouse Alley. Again, no names up. But look I said there's 3 different shapes, round, square, rectangular. Look at these 2. Here's a square, here's a rectangular, there's a car. Aren't these gorgeous? Continental Telephone and Telegraph Company. Over on Main Street, there's about 5 feet away from is Western Union Telephone Company. Then about 20 feet away is Memphis Telephone Company. 110 years ago, we didn't have a large telephone network. If you were in Memphis, you had 3 different telephone companies, okay? Continental, Western, and Memphis. And if you wanted to talk to all your friends, you had to have 3 different telephone lines, 3 different telephone sets, 3 different telephone numbers in your house, and you couldn't talk to yourself in your own house. And you couldn't take pictures with your telephone either. And that all got consolidated. So manhole covers can tell you stories of how we progressed in utilities and phones, just like the trolley tracks and everything. There's little stories about everything, but some of these are my favorite manhole covers right here because they're square. 70% of the manhole covers are round. There's like 10 reasons why manhole covers are round. The number 1 reason is a round cover cannot fall into a round hole. Okay, you can turn that one square and turn it and it'll drop in. And then you see some of these old names, Memphis Light and Power Company. Well, before that time there was a Memphis Power and Light Company. If you look at the family tree chart of utilities in Memphis, when they all started in the 1870s and 80s, light, gas, and water, there were private companies doing all that work in the public sector, and who could trust who's hooking up who to where. And that's why Mr. Crump thought it was a big deal to get it all under one roof. So in 1939, that finally happened when Memphis Light, Gas, and Water formed. It's the largest multi-purpose utility under one roof in America. 3-service utility, they say, at the MLG&W. And all that kind of happened because of November the 4th, 1934 Street. I mean, November the 6th, 1934 Street, which doesn't get any credit. Courthouse Alley. Courthouse Alley. Here's the McGavin House, the oldest residence in Memphis. Eugene McGavin was an Irishman, a priest. Our first school teacher, his schoolhouse was over in Court Square. It's been, over the years, added on to several times. Come around this way and see the little garden over here. Back in the 1990s and early 2000s, garden clubs actually came down and maintained gardens back here. Come back and look on the other side of that gate. You talk about a nice little quiet patch of green. McGavin House is run by Memphis Pink Palace Museum System. It's open 12 to 4 on the first Saturday of each month, just one day a month. McGavin House down in Victorian Village is also run by them. It's open on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, I think. If you want to go to the Mallory, you want to go to a place you haven't been to in Memphis yet, in your staycation pledge you made to me a long time ago, go to the Mallory Neely House. You will not see another home like that within 500 miles. And taking pictures of it doesn't, go inside and look at all, it's unbelievable. And go in that piano in the back room, you'll see W.C. Handy, Miss Daisy, he autographed a picture of, not a picture, a piece of Memphis blues. You go up in her bedrooms, there's a 1948 TV. She lived there for like 90 years. So 1948 is when we got TVs in Memphis. This stuff, it's just incredible, odd stuff all over. But the trim, the lattice work, it's just incredible. The ceiling murals, and it's just furniture, the light fixtures, just phenomenal. Great tours there. Also on here, Eugene McGavin, think about this. How many presidents have you lived under? I think I'm at 12 right now. Eugene McGavin lived under 19 presidents. There's a tree in here. That's what this Let Freedom Ring is right here. There's a tree in here representing every president. See the plaques right here? 19 different presidents he lived under. There's a different tree planted here for that. I think, like I say, I started with Eisenhower. Or maybe Truman, 52. I don't know, maybe Eisenhower came in 53. So I'll start with Truman, let's say, all the way up to now. So that's about 12 or 13. So think about all the presidents you lived, but he's 19 at the time, Number 2, I think it started out with Adams, John Adams. Every once in a while, some of these plaques are knocked off. So you need to come over here with a Phillips head screwdriver and your own wood screws and just put them back up, okay? Don't tell nobody you did it, just do it, Beautiful area back there. I wish we could get the garden clubs interested again in maintaining a few little gardens in there. But this is a great tour when they give the Randy Witherington, I went to high school with, is the one that gave us the tour, and we brought the Davies Manor docents down here back in March for a little pep, pre-opening thing we do with them, and it was a fabulous tour. You'll get great tours at the Mallory Neely House, you really will. And Woodrow Fontaine House over there too, All right, let's go up this alley here up Washington, back to Civic Center Plaza. Let's see, so when you see all these colors on the street of somebody, they're called the 811 service, call before you dig. There's 7 different colors, 7 different utilities, gas, water, drain, sewer, electric, telephone, and traffic signal. So like blue is water, red is electricity, orange is telecommunications, I think, yellow is gas. They all have a code when they spray. It's supposed to be dissolvable ink too. And that's so you call before you dig. All the you'll see about 8 different type of little symbols inside these telephone ones like this, from Bell South to United this, but usually these little 6-sided, whatever you call those things, hexagonals or something. That's usually our telephones, without saying it. William C. Ellis and Company. There's 21 different foundry names I found. William C. Ellis was down there below the Orpheum Theater. 70% of the manhole covers in America now are made in India. Think about that. Let's go. All right, there's Trinity Lutheran Church, the little church that wouldn't move. He got asked to 4 times while they're expanding the jail and everything. And they said, what is better for prisoners than to walk out a window and see the hope of looking at a church? We hope. Again, his sanctuary is on the 2nd floor, so they're closer to heaven as Lutherans. Remember, all right, right over there is a historical marker for Malcolm Rice Patterson. Patterson Street out there by the university is named for him, okay? Because he was governor, one of the 4 governors from Memphis in Tennessee back in like 1906 and 1909. That's when they voted on West Tennessee Normal School, the location, and he helped push that through to Memphis. He could have gone to Covington or Martin or somewhere else. Yeah, East Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, West Tennessee. So we named a street for him there. Deloach Street's named for Josiah Deloach. That's a whole nother story. And then you got, here are the 6 statues up here. Integrity, courage, mercy, prudence, temperance, and learning, okay? Got that? Let's repeat after me, let's go. And here's what's wrong with our government right now. You can explain it all right here in my world. There's two things wrong. We don't have any learning going on in our community or any integrity, right? Well, in 1947, a lightning bolt hit Integrity's head and knocked it off. And they glued it back on, okay? Twice in the 1960s, when they're putting the rooftop air conditioning units up on this building, they knocked off Learning's head on the very end, okay? Twice. Glued it back on. But look up there, one on the very far right, look at Learning's head. That back half is missing. Half of her brain is missing up there in Learning. So we lost our integrity and our learning 50 years ago, 70 years ago, right here. That explains it right there, doesn't it? Prince Mongo didn't tell me that. Come on, you agree? All right, this building right here is built in 1925, is the jail, Shelby County Jail, that replaces the jail that's over there on the northwest corner of Willis and Front. That white fence, or white, not fence, but wall, I guess you'd see. It was a 3-story jail. When you look at the old pictures of the old renderings, it's a very nice jail. They relocated over here in 1925. And this was the jail they brought James Earl Ray back to in 1968. So he goes on the run, he gets over to England, he gets captured in England. He's under federal or international police surveillance for like 10 days, flies into the Millington airport. Our sheriff at the time was Bill Morris, a future mayor. Jack Morris's friend was a good friend too, the automobile glass guy, not any relation. So now you got James Earl Ray coming back to Memphis. He's going to be extradited to Nashville so he can get a fair trial. And the state troopers got to come down here and pick him up. What happened 5 years earlier in Dallas? Lee Harvey Oswald's being exchanged. Jack Ruby comes up and shoots him, right? Well, that's the last thing we needed to do after Dr. King was killed here on April the 4th. In June of that year, Bobby Kennedy just been shot, you know. Cities were burning in summer of '68. I was playing a marathon basketball game for 36 hours. That's where my world was, you know. And so all the national media is around the front of this courthouse waiting for the state troopers to come down to get the exchange. That exchange based on what happened 5 years earlier. Well, Morris didn't want anything to do with that. So at that time, again, all the sheriff's cars were back in the back there. They had gas pumps back there so they could gas up their cars from down here. So they got James Earl Ray and they walked him out the back door. Morris was in his uniform. Jack Morris was a reserve deputy walking with him. And they walked James Earl Ray up to the car, put him in the back seat. They start pumping gas. They close the doors, they get in the car and they drive off. And nobody saw them. Well, guess what happened? That happened so quick without any disruption. The state troopers had 2 more hours to go to get here. So they started driving around Memphis with James Earl Ray in the car. Like, what do we do? 2 good old boys from Memphis driving the #1 most wanted man in the world around Memphis, Tennessee, like he's sightseeing. James Earl Ray, he heard a story. His picture was in the World Book Encyclopedia that year. So they went over to Morris's house and got a World Book Encyclopedia and brought it out to the car so he could look at his picture in the World Book Encyclopedia. This is all in Jack Morris's book. Paul Morris's son verifies it. The alive Bill Morris verifies it too. I'm not making this up. And now 2 hours had gone by them driving James Earl Ray around Memphis. They meet the state troopers out underneath the bridge, like exit 14 in the interstate, exchange him in the grass out there in the median. State troopers drive off to Nashville. Jack Morris and Bill Morris make a beeline down there. They've been around for 2 or 3 hours. All this excitement's building up here, and they come back and inform them, we went out the back door, he's gone. There was some kind of mad media around here. But isn't that cool? I mean, that is only in the movies and in Memphis. You can't make this stuff up. And there are people that are still alive that can verify that too. And I'll stand by it 100%. Because Bill Morris says so. Bill Morris is one of the most dynamic people to ever meet in Memphis, Tennessee. Don't ever follow him on a podium talking, okay? One week, about 4 years ago, I'd get on the American Queen in Helena or Vicksburg, and I'd give lectures all the way in. We'd arrive on the daytime parts of the trip in the big salon on the boat about Memphis and Memphis music. And then the boat would get in about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'd get out and turn the lights on at Beale Street Landing, get the golf carts out, start moving the luggage up with 6 guys, get 500 suitcases up by 7 o'clock, then get all the passengers out by 9. Well, that day, I'm on the American Queen. I had to follow Mark Twain. Try to follow Mark Twain on a riverboat in the Mississippi River. Like, you're going to be really popular, you know. So The day after that, I was speaking in Germantown Country Club, and I was following Memphis Jones. You ever seen Memphis Jones talk and sing about Memphis down on Beale Street? Very dynamic. He used to work at Gibson Guitar Factory. And then the third day, I had to follow Bill Morris at the National Civil Rights Museum with Church Health Center. Who was the hardest of those three to follow? Bill Morris. His story, helping form Church Health Center, the story of his life, the things he done. And he says it so southernly and so eloquently. Well, you've interviewed people like this before, whether it's Shelby Foote or Eudora Welty or whatever you've done, and all those Mississippi people. I guess you did Eudora Welty or not, did you? Oh, well, I'm too old for you. Oh, okay. Oh, well. But if you ever get a chance to be here, and he recently wrote a book, you know, so but if you ever get a chance to be, and go here, Bill, it's worth the price of admission, even if there is no admission too. So, all right, let's walk up this way to get back to the pinch. We'll end the tour right here for this one if y'all got to go that way. Where are you going, 5K?
Back to the Brinkley.
That's that way, isn't it? What's your real name?
Brian.
Brian. A round of applause for Brian.
Thank you, Jimmy.
All right,
Thank you.
let's go. Let's go this way. We want to show you the prettiest cobblestones on the way back to that way. If you want to walk, you can go. All right, come on. I mean, look at all the different colors of cobblestones. They say there's 9 different kinds of igneous rock. I can't spell igneous, I don't think, but 9 different kinds of igneous rock. And look at all this too. Isn't this just gorgeous right through here? Look how red that one is. Well, it's a water meter cover. It says water on it, so it would come up and it'd be like a water meter in there. Ain't no man little enough to go down in there, you know.